My sister Lydia made sure everyone at her wedding knew I was the sad single one. She sat me at the reject table, introduced me as still searching for someone, and even had her bridesmaids whisper about my lonely love life. But when a mysterious man leaned close to me and said, "Act like you're with me," everything changed. What happened after that turned her perfect wedding day into my perfect revenge. If you've ever been embarrassed by family who think being single makes you less important, hit that like button. And subscribe if you believe karma shows up in the most surprising ways, because this story proves that sometimes the best revenge is served with a big side of jealousy. The wedding hall shined with golden lights and crystal chandeliers. But all I could stare at was the card in my hand. Table 12. The singles table. The reject corner. Lydia had planned it this way to make sure everyone knew her older sister was still alone. I'm Hannah. And I should probably explain how I became the family embarrassment at my own sister's fairy tale wedding. Lydia and I were never close, but over the last year the competition between us had become toxic. Ever since she got engaged to Richard, a rich investment banker, she made it her mission to remind me that I was 32 and still single. "Maybe try dating apps again," she would say in a fake caring voice during family dinners. "You can't be picky forever. Time is running out, Hannah." Our mother, Diane, would nod sadly, and our father, Adam, would quickly change the subject, but Lydia never stopped. She actually seemed to enjoy my romantic failures, as if my being single made her look happier and more successful. The morning of her wedding, she called me with what she claimed was sisterly advice. "Hannah, sweetie, I know today might be hard for you," she said, her tone dripping with fake sympathy. "Seeing everyone happy and in love. Just try not to look too sad in the photos, okay? And don't spend the whole night talking to the bartender like you did at Cousin Joanne's wedding." That should have warned me about what was coming. When I reached the Grand View Manor reception hall, wearing a navy dress I'd spent weeks choosing, Lydia's maid of honor, Marion, walked up with a clipboard and a forced smile. "Oh, Hannah, let me take you to your table," she said with that sugary voice Lydia was famous for. Table 12 was shoved into a back corner near the kitchen doors, where servers rushed in and out. The people there were Lydia's single co-workers who barely said a word to me, plus our elderly great-aunt Janet, who complained about the loud music and asked if I'd ever thought about lowering my standards. But the real humiliation came when Lydia decided to show me off during family introductions. The reception was lively when she tugged my arm and dragged me toward a group of Richard's wealthy relatives. "And this is my sister, Hannah," Lydia said proudly, her arm hooked around Richard like she was making a point. "She's our little career woman, still focusing on work instead of finding someone special." The group smiled politely while I felt my face heat up. Mrs. Wellington, Richard's aunt, looked me over with pity. "Oh dear, don't worry," she said, patting my arm. "There's someone for everyone. Have you tried church groups? My nephew William met his wife in a prayer circle." Lydia laughed, not a kind laugh, but the laugh of someone enjoying your pain. "Hannah's very independent, aren't you, sis?" she said, making independent sound like a medical problem. "I just haven't found the right person yet," I replied, trying to stay calm. "Well, you can't wait forever," Richard's mother added. "My daughter waited too long and now she's 45 with fertility problems. Don't make that mistake." For the next hour, I got buried under unwanted dating advice. Lydia's friends, Richard's business partners, random family members, all giving me tips like I'd asked for help. Joseph, Richard's business partner, suggested I lower my standards. Christopher, a family friend, told me about his aunt who found love at 50, with a widower who had 6 kids. Even the photographer joined in. When taking family photos, he kept asking if I had A+1 and looked confused every time I said no. The worst part came during the bouquet toss. All single ladies to the dance floor. The DJ called, sounding way too excited. I tried to hide behind a pillar, but Marion spotted me and dragged me out. This could be your lucky night, Hannah. I ended up standing with a bunch of 20-something girls who were giggling and squealing as Lydia raised the bouquet. They were Richard's younger cousins, beautiful, confident, and glowing with youth. Lydia looked right at me, smirked, and threw the bouquet in the opposite direction. A 24-year-old named Chloe caught it. The room cheered. Lydia hugged her and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Looks like Hannah will have to wait a little longer." Laughter filled the room. It felt like it scraped across my skin. People stared at me with that look, half pity, half relief, that comes when they witness someone else being embarrassed. I went back to my table, trying not to cry. This day was supposed to be about love, but Lydia used it to crush my confidence. I decided I wanted to leave, to vanish before Lydia got to see me break down. I grabbed my purse when a deep, calm voice spoke behind me. "Act like you're with me." I turned and saw a man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair and a steady, confident presence. His eyes were kind but focused, and there was something magnetic about him. "Sorry?" I whispered. "Your sister just spent 10 minutes telling my business partner how worried she is that you're still alone," he said as he smoothly took the seat beside me. "I'm guessing you didn't ask her to tell strangers your personal life." He was right. I saw Lydia across the room, pointing at me while talking to Richard's colleagues, probably telling them how sad it was that I couldn't find anyone. "You don't mind, do you?" he asked. His tone made it clear he already had a plan. I shook my head, too surprised to speak. For the first time all night, I felt seen. "I'm William," he said, offering his hand with a warm smile. "Richard's cousin from Boston. And you're Hannah, the sister who apparently needs saving from eternal single life." "Despite everything," I laughed. "That's me, the family charity case." "Well, not anymore," he said with a smile that was both reassuring and slightly mischievous. William draped his arm casually along the back of my chair and leaned in to speak to me like we'd known each other for years. Almost immediately, I noticed heads turning in our direction. Lydia, mid-con conversation with the wedding planner, did a double take when she saw us. Her smile faltered for just a moment before she excused herself and started walking toward our table, her train trailing behind her like a weapon. "Hannah," she called out, her voice an octave higher than usual. "I didn't know you knew William." "Old friends," William said smoothly, his hand touching mine on the table. "We lost touch for a while, but you know how these things go." Lydia's eyes narrowed slightly, her perfect wedding composure cracking just enough to show her confusion. "Really? Hannah never mentioned you." "I try to keep my private life private," I said, finally finding my voice and some of my confidence. "You know how I am about work-life balance." The irony wasn't lost on me. Lydia had spent the entire evening broadcasting my lack of a love life, and now she was fishing for details about a relationship that didn't exist. "How wonderful," Lydia said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. "How long have you two been reconnecting?" "Long enough," William said with a smile that gave away nothing and everything. As Lydia walked away, clearly frustrated by the lack of information, William turned to me with a conspiratorial whisper. "She looks like she just bit into a lemon," he said. I couldn't help but smile. She's not used to not knowing everything about my life or having me upstage her in any way. "Good," he said. "Let's keep her guessing." For the next hour, William played the part perfectly. He brought me drinks from the bar, laughed at my jokes, and touched my hand just enough to make our connection believable. But more than that, he actually listened when I talked. He asked about my work in marketing, my love of hiking, and my recent trip to Ireland. "You're not what I expected," he said during a quiet moment between songs. "What did you expect?" "Based on your sister's description, someone desperate and pathetic," he said bluntly. Instead, I'm sitting with someone intelligent, funny, and honestly. I can't figure out why you're single. Because I have standards, I said without thinking. He laughed, a genuine warm sound that made something inside my chest loosen. Good for you. By this point, Lydia was openly staring at our table. I could see her whispering to Marian, who kept glancing over at us with obvious curiosity. Richard's family members, who had pied me earlier, were now looking at William with interest and approval, clearly recognizing his social status, and wondering how I'd managed to land someone so obviously successful. The revenge was already sweeter than I'd imagined. But William wasn't done. When the band started playing slow songs, he stood up and extended his hand with a confident smile. "Dance with me," he said. It wasn't a question. On the dance floor, with his hand on my waist and mine on his shoulder, I felt the eyes of every guest who had offered me unsolicited dating advice. But instead of feeling exposed, I felt protected. William moved with the kind of natural rhythm that suggested he'd grown up taking dancing lessons, and being in his arms felt surprisingly natural. "Your sister is watching," William murmured as we swayed to the music. "I know," I said. "She looks like she's going to explode." Mission accomplished. I looked up at him, this stranger who had given me back my dignity with a simple gesture. Almost. That's when Lydia made her move. "Mind if I cut in?" she said, appearing beside us with Richard and tow. Her wedding smile was stretched tight across her face, and I could see the calculation behind her eyes. "Actually, yes," William said politely but firmly. "We're having a moment." Lydia's face went through several expressions before settling on forced brightness. "Of course, I just wanted to say how happy I am that Hannah finally found someone. We were all so worried about her." "Were you?" William asked, his tone neutral, but his eyes sharp. "Because from what I've observed tonight, it seems like you've been more interested in broadcasting her single status than supporting her." The directness of his statement left Lydia speechless for a moment. Richard shifted uncomfortably beside her, clearly sensing the tension, but not understanding its source. We just want what's best for Hannah," Lydia stammered, her composure cracking. "Then maybe treat her with the respect she deserves instead of using her love life as entertainment for your wedding guests," William said calmly. I had never seen Lydia look so rattled. Her perfect wedding confidence was completely shattered. And for the first time all evening, she was the one who looked small. "I don't know what Hannah told you, but she didn't have to tell me anything," William interrupted. "I have eyes. I can see how you've been treating her all evening." Richard finally stepped in, clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of the confrontation. "Maybe we should let them get back to dancing." As they walked away, Lydia's composure was completely destroyed. I could see her frantically whispering to Marian, probably trying to figure out who William was and how I'd managed to land someone so obviously out of my league. "That felt really good," I admitted as we continued dancing. "We're not done yet," William said with a smile that made my heart skip. For the rest of the evening, William made sure I was never alone. When dinner was served, he requested that we be moved to a better table. Something about his dietary restrictions requiring him to be closer to the kitchen. The staff, clearly knowing who Richard's family was, accommodated us immediately. Our new table was front and center, where everyone could see us laughing and talking like a real couple. Lydia's friends, who had ignored me earlier, suddenly wanted to chat and meet William. Richard's relatives, who had pied me, now treated me with newfound respect and curiosity about mysterious boyfriend. Mrs. Wellington, who had suggested church groups earlier, now wanted to know all about William's family background. When she learned he was a successful tech entrepreneur with an MBA from Harvard, her attitude toward me changed completely. "Hannah, you dark horse," she said with genuine admiration. "You never mentioned you were seeing someone so accomplished." But the final act of revenge came during the garter toss. When Richard prepared to throw the garter to all the single men, William stepped forward with the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where he was. "Wait," Lydia called out desperately. "William, you're not single." William looked at me, then back at Lydia with a mysterious smile. "Actually, I am. Hannah and I are taking things slow, getting reacquainted." The garter landed directly in his hands. Whether by luck or Richard's aim, I'll never know. But the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, especially Lydia. According to tradition, William was supposed to place the garter on the leg of whoever caught the bouquet. But that young cousin Chloe had left early. "Looks like we need a volunteer," the DJ announced. William looked at me with a question in his eyes. I nodded. The crowd cheered as I sat in the chair, and William knelt before me, sliding the garter onto my leg with a gentleness that felt surprisingly intimate for an act of pretense. The moment felt charged with possibility, and I found myself wondering if the chemistry between us was entirely fake. Lydia's face was a mask of barely controlled fury as she watched her single, pathetic sister become the center of positive attention at her own wedding. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, William walked me to my car. The parking lot was quiet, away from the watchful eyes of wedding guests and my family. "Thank you," I said, finally alone with him. "I know tonight was just an act, but you saved me from the most humiliating experience of my life." "What makes you think it was just an act?" he asked, his expression serious. My heart stopped. Because you don't even know me." "I know enough," he said, stepping closer. "I know you're kind, even when people don't deserve it. I know you're strong enough to endure a night of humiliation without fighting back. I know you're beautiful inside and out. And I know your sister is an idiot for not seeing how lucky she is to have you as family." I felt tears threatening, but this time they weren't from humiliation. "William, I know this started as a rescue mission," he said, "but somewhere between the first dance and now, it stopped being pretend for me." He handed me a business card with his personal number written on the back in elegant handwriting. "If you want to see me again, not for revenge, not to prove a point, just because you want to, call me." I took the card with shaking hands. "What if I want to call you tonight?" He smiled, that same confident smile that had first caught my attention. "Then I'll answer." 3 months later, William and I were officially dating. 6 months after that, we moved in together. And exactly 1 year after Lydia's wedding, he proposed to me in the same hotel where we'd first met. Lydia's reaction to our engagement announcement was everything I could have hoped for. The sister who had spent years making me feel inadequate for being single was now forced to watch me plan a wedding with a man who clearly adored me and who came from an even wealthier family than Richard. But the real revenge wasn't in proving Lydia wrong about my worthiness of love. It was in realizing that I didn't need her validation anymore. William's respect and genuine affection had shown me what I deserved, and I was never going to settle for less again. Our wedding was smaller than Lydia's, but infinitely more joyful. Instead of using the occasion to humiliate anyone, we celebrated with people who genuinely wanted us to be happy. Lydia gave a speech as my maid of honor, something she'd insisted on despite our complicated history. She talked about how happy she was to see me find love. How William was clearly perfect for me, how she'd always known I'd find someone special. The revisionist history was breathtaking. But I didn't care anymore. I had something more valuable than her approval. I had someone who saw my worth from the very beginning. Looking back, Lydia's wedding was the worst night of my life. Her cruelty showed me how I'd been allowing people to treat me, but it also led me to William. Without her humiliation, I never would have been vulnerable enough to accept help from a stranger. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up giving us exactly what we need to change our lives. Lydia wanted to make me feel small and pathetic. Instead, she created the circumstances for me to meet my future husband. The irony is perfect. In trying to prove I was unlovable, she delivered me directly to the love of my life. If this story reminded you that the best revenge is living well, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories of karma and unexpected love. Have you ever had someone's cruelty backfire spectacularly? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor about justice, and sometimes that humor leads to happiness ever after.